In Washington, D.C., the U.S. Senate has passed legislation to try and cancel Donald Trump's trade war on Canada. 4 Republican senators voted with the Democrats.
The right answer to the U.S.-Canada relationship on trade is to go back to the table on USMCA, find anything that hasn't worked, anything that can be made better, negotiate and make it better.
It passed 50 to 46, the latest in a series of votes to try and terminate national emergencies that Trump has used to try to impose tariffs. But this is largely symbolic because the House of Representatives, which is the other part of Congress, refuses to take up this vote, this bill, and even if it were to pass in both houses, Donald Trump would likely just veto it anyway. Let's bring in CTV's Jeremie Charron with more. You do get a sense, Jeremie, of where this is going in terms of the growing frustration by some senators from both parties over what Trump is trying to do on the trade front, all of it coming as the U.S. Supreme Court, as you know, is also considering Donald Trump's radical trade policies.
Yeah, look, I think it all kind of plays together, right? And it's all part of mounting pressure domestically on Trump and his trade policies and the trade war with Canada and with all these other countries. Ultimately, it is political pressure right now. That's all it is. This decision by the senators adds to that political pressure. It does not mean that these tariffs are going to go away as a result of this vote, but it certainly continues to put pressure on Trump and his administration. And makes it a little more difficult for them to keep going down this path when it's not as popular with lawmakers and the American people. So, you know, I think as they continue to do this, you continue to see more American lawmakers, including Republicans, speaking out about against some of the practices, trade practices. So, you know, ultimately, I think it plays into the overall picture of mounting pressure domestically that Trump is facing at a time when, you know, here there is tension between Canada and the U.S. and the relationship, ongoing attempts at negotiations. Trump has ended all the negotiations as a result of that ad from Ontario. And there's continued kind of things happening as a result of that. We saw most recently the U.S. Ambassador, Pete Hoekstra, publicly going after David Patterson, who is the trade representative for Ontario to Washington. They were in a group or at an event in front of business people, and Hoekstra was, you know, criticizing him, criticizing Ontario for this ad that they put out. People in the room that spoke with CTV, you know, described it as uncomfortable, a tense exchange between the two. And as a result, the premier is now saying that Hoekstra should apologize to David Patterson. So all of that is adding to the tension that exists right now between Canada and the U.S. As talks are paused, official negotiations are paused. Nonetheless, Todd, we know that yesterday the prime minister and the president were both at a dinner together. We know they talked. Not, you know, it wasn't a meeting, it wasn't some extensive conversation, but Donald Trump called it a good conversation, and I think that is a sign of maybe where we could be heading. Hopefully, that's what I think many are hoping for.
And so when you hear good conversation, we just don't know what that actually means or doesn't mean. And when the president said it, he was kind of smiling, Jeremie, too.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to know exactly what he means by that. But as we've been talking about, it's better than the alternative, right? It's better than the president having negative things or bad things to say or having not spoken to him at all. Does it mean anything in the grand scheme of things? Probably not. We know that they're both going to be at the APEC summit as well in South Korea. And so I think there will be a lot of eyes watching to see whether or not the two have a more extensive conversation. We know that the prime minister is going to be meeting with Xi Jinping, the president of China. There was talks leading up to this Asian trip that the prime minister would try and have a conversation with U.S. President Donald Trump. But all of that was, of course, before what has unfolded with the talks being paused. So there's a lot of work to be done. That is clear. We've heard that from officials on this side that you know, they're continuing to try and put the work in. They're continuing to try and keep the lines of communication open. But at this point, the U.S. administration has made it clear, at least in an official capacity, there is no negotiating happening right now. And, you know, Canadian officials are trying to do everything they can to ensure that that changes.
CTV's Jeremie Charron with the very latest on this one. Thanks, Jeremie.
Anytime, Todd.